All right, so I'd like to go ahead and get started here. I want to thank everyone for joining us here and online. By your response, I kind of see that this is what you guys want. You want to have more seminars, something like this, as far as emotional eating and other things related to surgery. So thank you for showing up, and we'll look at doing more of these. And you can stay posted on our website. We have our Facebook page. And there's outlets that you can find seminars that we hold and support groups. So tonight you're going to meet Michelle Lewis. She's a licensed clinical social worker and owner of Salt Lake Weight Counseling Center. And she's one that we work closely with here at Rocky Mountain. And she deals with patients before and after surgery in support groups and other outlets. So a great resource to you now and in the future. She offers her services in her own private practice in many outlets. And that includes weight management, relationship, women's issues, stress management, and she offers support and groups and other workshops and binge eating. And so her website is slweightcounseling.com, and you can learn more about what she does. She offers seminars where you can come in and just learn more about what she does and what the practice does, and she has other medical professionals that she works closely with as well. And their next event is on the 23rd as a free invite to come in and learn more about what they do. Her next workshop that's going to start is going to be on the 24th, and so you can also learn more on her website there. And this is kind of an introduction to that website or to that workshop. So if you enjoy tonight, if you're looking at learning more about emotional eating and how to overcome that barrier, that would be a great workshop to attend. And so you can learn more about that on her website as well. So I'm going to turn the time over to Michelle and allow her to take some time tonight and talk about emotional eating.
Wardrobe change here. Okay. Awkward standing next to my picture like so as she mentioned, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And how I really got into this, I was actually hired by an insurance company to work in their corporate wellness program, to work with emotional barriers around health and wellness goals. And I started using a lot of my addictions background with weight loss. And people started making changes for the first time in their life, really started making long-term changes. And it was funny because one of my members that I was working with said, I don't know what it is that you're doing that's different, but I've never had this kind of experience before. I was like, well, you just did therapy. So, some people, or a lot of people, don't really think about therapy as a part of this process, but so much of our connection with food is emotional. We'll talk a little bit about that. So what is emotional eating? When I say emotional eating, what does that mean? And I will tell you right now, y'all better get involved because I get tired of hearing my own voice. You will too. So tell me what that brings up for you.
Kind of looks like Kevin.
Not until the aftermath, right?
I know.
So what is emotional eating? What does that mean? Right. I noticed you didn't say eating when you're hungry. Right?
Right.
Because, sometimes when we talk about eating, I say, are you hungry? Well, what does hunger have to do with it? Right? So we will talk in depth about what this all means. So why do we emotionally eat? Does anyone know some of the foundation?
Comfort.
Okay. But why would it provide comfort?
Something you have control over when you do it and how you do it. So it's just a comfort too. You're not putting guidelines or stuff like that. I go to McDonald's, go to Arby's or
Yes.
and you basically have to choose what one.
Right. So you have some choice. It gives you some control over your whatever your emotional state is, right?
Right.
And how, in part, how it does that is it increases your neurotransmitters. Everyone knows what neurotransmitters are, right?
Will you please summarize the responses or
Oh.
questions for those?
Yeah, you bet. He said basically you get to do what you want to do. It's almost like what you're saying is it provides an escape from reality, escape from everyday life. And part of that is it increases those feel-good chemicals, right? And we're going to talk in depth about that today.
Well, maybe you'll get to that, but are we wired in a different way than other people that don't get this charge out of food?
Yes and no, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think some of it turns on, but a lot of it's just that addictive process. So just like some people are hardwired to be more drawn to alcohol, some people are more hardwired to be drawn to food. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Painful experiences change the structure of the brain. So trauma actually changes the structure of our brain. We have what we call train tracks in our mind, you know? And they're all these little connections, millions and millions and millions of connections all throughout our brain. Painful emotional experiences actually create new connections. So do addictive and compulsive behaviors. So what happens is we have this incredibly taxing emotional experience, and then we reach for food. So we go through the drive-thru at McDonald's. We have that soothing experience. We have created a new connection. And what happens is every time we go back to that connection over and over and over again, it strengthens. It's just like going to the gym and lifting weights. This is why diets in and of themselves don't typically work for people, because it doesn't change that neural path. It doesn't unbreak that connection. Okay? So then we have that conditioned response. It's 3 p.m. and yesterday I went through the drive-thru at McDonald's. So today I want to do the same thing. So we develop that behavior pattern, that habit. How many of you guys have said, well, it's a habit, I just don't know how to break it. I've done it so many times, right? So it's that conditioned response. Again, that strengthened connection. And then along with that, we have avoidance. So, you know, when you have that urge to go through the drive-thru, sorry, I'm picking on your drive-thru all over the place. McDonald's is getting a lot of free advertising tonight. What is it that you're trying to avoid? What is it that you are trying to escape?
Feeling your feeling.
Yeah.
Yes. Because they're uncomfortable, right? And even if you can use that experience to numb yourself for a few minutes, it feels really good. Because you have, again, those neurotransmitters. Do you have a pointer on here?
The middle button, I think.
Okay. So yeah, so we have all of these pieces working in conjunction with one another, which is why it makes it so difficult to break that pattern. We're going to go through the brain really quickly. I tend to nerd out a little bit, so you'll just have to bear with me. And we'll go through this kind of quickly because I tend to spend too much time on it, and then we don't have as much time to talk about the what to do, which is why you're all here, right? The what to do. So we have three main structures. There are a lot of structures, well, there are 5 main structures actually, that are involved in this process. There are a lot of other ones. We're kind of simplifying this. But first we're going to talk about the prefrontal cortex. Does anyone know what the prefrontal cortex does?
Reasoning.
Yes, absolutely. Reasoning, planning, organizing, decision making. So that's our frontal lobe, right? Does anyone know at what point in our life that is done being cooked? At 21? Actually, they're looking more like 30. You know? Yeah, it seems like every couple of years they increase that, right? So what's interesting about this is that planning and decision-making process, by the time we're 30, we have already created so many habits, but we're at war with ourselves a lot of the time. In addition, this is where we moderate social behavior. So this is where a lot of the self-judgment starts to come in around food. A lot of the secrecy around eating comes in with food because We want it, we're addicted to it, we've created these connections, but we don't want anyone else to know about it, right? No one in here has experienced that, right? Never. And then we have the ability to differentiate between conflicting thoughts. So this is that angel devil on your shoulder all the time. I want it, I don't know if I need it, people might judge me if I have it. So a lot of the shame stuff starts building in here. Then we have the VTA, the ventral tegmental area. Does anyone know what this is? Kind of a mouthful. It's actually just a group of neurons here in the midbrain. It's not a structure in and of itself, it's just a grouping of these neurons. And what it's responsible for is reward circuitry. So this and then the nucleus accumbens, we'll talk about in just a minute, that's where that rush comes in with food. And we'll talk about the pleasure center stuff in just a minute. But it's also where the motivation, cognition, and addiction components start to really take shape. Okay? And then we have the nucleus accumbens, which is where the pleasure center is. So these two areas in particular are working together to bring as much pleasure as possible. And then this area is like, I don't know, guys, I think you're getting out of control a little bit here. So we have a lot of that conflicting behavior there. So we have the pleasure and reward, and then reinforcement and learning. So this is where we have that pleasurable experience, and our brain learns, ooh, maybe I can do that again. Maybe I can have that same feeling that I had when I went through McDonald's. And then this is where our dopamine starts surging in our brains as well. Okay, so now we have the amygdala. Has anyone ever heard of the amygdala? What do you know about it?
No, it's partial.
Right. Okay.
And I know that I used to know stuff, but.
Okay.
Is that where your smell connection of that?
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's actually where the hippocampus is, so yes. Very
Yes
good.
and no? Is it-
Yes and no, very
Is
good.
that the pleasure center? No.
Not as much. So it's our reptilian brain. So it's our most primitive brain, which is where we go for survival, all of our survival instincts. So this is where our emotional arousal comes from. So those heightened emotional experiences. It's also where our memories get consolidated. So we have these two things together, which is really kind of interesting. We have the emotional arousal, and then we have these memories of the emotional arousal. So those are the things that kind of keep us heightened and hypervigilant, or maintain that conditioned response, because we remember it, right? So, not surprising, this is where a lot of the anxiety disorders start to come from. So, PTSD, because of the memorized consolidation and the emotional arousal, anxiety, and OCD. So, all of those things here. I promise this will make a little bit more sense in a minute. And then we have the hippocampus. So you said the sense of smell. Why did that pop into your mind?
It was from a movie.
It's your movie. Okay.
It was associated with someone that she was dating and she broke up with him, so she wanted. Oh, yeah, she didn't want to remember that.
Gotcha. Okay. So the olfactory bulb is what's involved with smell. Why do you think that would be significant as we're talking about food and memory?
Research, I don't know how recent it is, but it has shown that sense of smell is one of our senses that is most directly connected to memory.
Yes. And it's not surprising considering how they're in close proximity there, right? So why would that be important to know? Yeah. How many of you guys have had a really positive memory involved with food that brings in your sense of smell? Baking cookies with your grandma? Anybody? So when we or bacon. Making bacon on Sunday morning? Yeah, sure. So as soon as you have that smell response, it brings you right back to that positive memory. So again, bringing in that conditioned response. So it's also involved with that memory. And then emotion based on the responses to memory. So it's a higher level of having an emotional response to that memory. Because something that happened 30, 40 years ago wouldn't necessarily bring that, but if you have that emotion, that higher level of emotion, that you can bring you right back there again, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about dopamine really quickly. What is dopamine for? These are those neurotransmitters we were talking about that are involved with food. Does anyone know the role of dopamine? Yes, feel-good chemical. Yeah, so desire and pleasure. The other interesting thing is attachment and love. Why do you think that would be important in all of this? Right, right? When we say we love food, we really mean we love food, right? It is that fast friend that is always there, right? Yeah. So we develop that attachment. Does anyone know when that attachment starts to form? Yeah, because think about that experience when you're a baby. What is that like? You cry, you get fed a sugary, fatty substance, and you get held. Yes, hello, right? That is very soothing. Problem is we keep looking for that at McDonald's. It's not the same, right? And then we also integrate our thoughts and feelings, and it's very involved in mood. So what that looks like, thinking about mood and what this looks like if we have deficiencies, does anyone know what anhedonia is?
No happiness.
No happiness, right? No pleasure in anything, okay? So when we don't have enough dopamine, we don't have pleasure in anything. We lack focus. We can't focus our attention on anything else. We don't feel that sense of love, attachment to anyone else, that connection. We don't feel remorse, and we feel highly distractible. What does that sound like to you? Yeah, those are some symptoms of ADHD, but what else? Addiction. Yes. So when we're going through withdrawals, whether it be from cocaine or heroin or cheeseburgers, all of these things start to come up, and it's because we are experiencing a significant deficit in dopamine. And part of what comes from that is that when we're engaging in addictive or compulsive behaviors, we have a constant flood of dopamine, far greater than is natural for us. And so our body becomes accustomed to it. In fact, what it actually starts to do is reduce our dopamine receptors because it's like, oh, this is too much, I can't handle this. And so when we stop eating those cheeseburgers, what happens? Yeah. How many of you guys, when you stopped eating junk food because of surgery, experienced any or all of these? Every hand better be going up here. I know to a certain extent that probably has been the case. Maybe not all of these, but there is a grieving process that goes on with this emotionally, and there's also a physical withdrawal process. Okay, serotonin. What do you know about serotonin? Mm-hmm. What else?
It's released when you exercise.
It definitely is. Yeah. Released when you, in case you guys didn't hear, makes you happy, released when you exercise. Well, not as much fight or flight. No, that's more adrenaline. Yeah. Also very important, but not as connected with food. Much more connected with stress. So stress eating would be involved with the fight or flight response for sure. So low levels, increased sensitivity to pain. How many? Well, I will ask you how many of you have been depressed. But if you've been depressed, you probably have experienced an increased pain, right? It is not all in your mind. I mean, it is kind of in your mind because serotonin is in your mind, but it's not psychological.
Well, I noticed after about 2 months after my surgery, there was an increase in, like I said, withdrawals, loss, lovely chocolate down there, so I don't know. But there was an increase in sensitivity to pain and cold.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, I was correct.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear what he said, a couple months after surgery, he noticed that there was an increased sensitivity to pain. So he's not sure if it is due to that serotonin level or what, but it was surprising to him. And it very well could be from the withdrawal around. Part of it could be because we go through huge fluctuations when we lose massive amounts of weight. So it takes your body some time to recalibrate all of your hormones and all of your body processes. So depression, we know that, it's involved in mood. Insomnia, okay. One of the things that they talk about with depression is that women in particular tend to be what they call atypical with depression. I don't know how there's an atypical and typical, but because people can get different symptoms just based on what's going on. But women tend to have more insomnia than men when they have depression. It's an interesting little fact. Aggressive behavior. Anyone who's been going through PMS knows what I'm talking about there. And actually, it is biological. You do have drops in serotonin, and you have increases in your stress hormones. Obsessive compulsive behavior. So, along with that, especially if we're talking about food obsessions can tend to come up a little bit more when you have serotonin levels drop. Along with that weight gain, so that could be on a biological level, but it also could be because of the increased obsession along with the appetite dysregulation, which means that we're not really sure what our body needs physically when we have appetite dysregulation. We might think we're hungry when our body isn't physically hungry, or it's trying to overcompensate. And part of what can be happening, and we'll talk about this in a minute too when we talk about sleep, but insomnia is huge for appetite dysregulation. We have increased food cravings. And then along with that, all of those things combined, as you can imagine, there's increased disorders. Okay. So food addiction has been kind of a hot topic. And there are different camps in this. Is it addiction? Is it not addiction?
Sorry, I missed that.
You want me to speak louder now? Some of the experts say, no, you can't be addicted to a substance that you are required to have to live. But the brain research shows differently. So the Yale milkshake study is very interesting. This woman in grad school, and she made quite a name for herself before she even graduated. But what she did is she took groups of women who struggle with overeating, and she gave them a picture of a chocolate milkshake and did a brain scan. So one of those functional MRIs that have colors that light up. What do you think happened?
Lit up.
Like a Christmas tree. So then she actually gave them the milkshake. What do you think happened? Sorry? Not as much. It was actually the anticipation of receiving the milkshake that lit up their brain more than having it. How many of you guys can relate to that? Where the planning, the ritual around all of this is much more exciting than actually having it. It's almost like once you take that bite, it's kind of a letdown and you're thinking about what you can get next, right? Okay? That, my friends, is a symptom of addiction. We need more and more to get that fix, get that high. And with that, which is kind of interesting, we talked about the dopamine, the flooding of dopamine, which reduces our dopamine receptors. But one of the things that they notice is that people who struggle with their weight also have a reduction in receptors and need more and more because of that, in addition to the false flooding of dopamine. Need more and more of that food to feel better, to feel that emotional high. Okay, so someone said, talking about, you had said something about, are we hardwired? So yes, in some ways we are hardwired for that. Some of this could be that you don't have access to, for whatever reason, to other substances. But we live in a culture heavily dominated by a religion that doesn't allow you to drink. It does, however, really encourage food, right? So I don't think that that's a coincidence that we have a high number of disordered eating here in Utah, because it is a socially acceptable drug. So we might be hardwired for addiction, and it could be just that early experience with food turns on that wire. That makes sense. But we're also hardwired for tastes. What do you think I mean by that? Okay. Why would we be hardwired for those things? Salty, just so you know, salty, sweet, fat.
Our brain needs some of that.
Yes.
Doesn't it crave that?
Sure. But even outside of that, I mean, what do you think would be the draw to those foods?
Physiology of it. The cavemen needed things that didn't kill them to eat, so they thought that it was fatty animals and things that berries that didn't kill them. They liked the ones that were sweetest, and it just kind of things that gave them the energy and the nutrition they needed in order to survive in the hunting and gathering eons.
Very good. So what he said is that in our caveman days, they needed food that wasn't going to kill them. So the sweet, salty, fatty foods weren't likely to be poisonous. Bitter and sour foods in the wild are often poisonous. Not only that, to his point, we needed calorie-dense foods. We needed foods that were going to give us enough energy to hunt and gather. And a lot of those, bitter leaves weren't going to do that, right? And then in addition to that, we have what we call the bliss factor. Does anyone know what that means? It does make you feel good. But think about foods that have all of these elements, like a chocolate milkshake.
Like next week, you get through eating.
Yeah. So he's saying, it's just like after Thanksgiving, you've eaten all of those different foods and you're totally satisfied. So all of those things combined really up the value of one another. So it's synergistic almost. If you haven't ever read it, there is a phenomenal book out there called The End of Overeating by David Kessler. He used to be the commissioner for the FDA. And what he did is he, through his FDA contacts, got to interview a lot of the food industry tycoons, and they talked about the psychology around eating and how they literally get in their labs and they try to make food as addictive as possible by adding all of these layers on one another. Really, really fascinating. In addition, there are some other pieces that go into this too. Think about Cinnabon. What is Cinnabon's most effective marketing strategy? Smell. Yeah. And you can smell that Cinnabon from whatever terminal of the airport you're in. It's kind of like popcorn in the movie theater, right? So drawing all of those things to create that psychology, that psychological need around it. All right, hormones. We're going to talk about hormones. In case you can't see it, it says, I'm fine, I hate you, I love you, I want ice cream, come here, get away, gorgeous. No one can relate to that, right? So, estrogen. How do you think estrogen plays into this?
Well, if it rises and falls during your cycle, that can create
Definitely. Okay, so what she said is, depending on the rise and fall, it can create dependency on different things throughout the month. And you are exactly correct. So what happens as our tides rise and fall, we have ups and downs in our serotonin and in our stress hormones. And so our body is kind of battling for balance, which is really kind of interesting because if you look at food on a very quick fix level, refined carbs actually boost your serotonin. Granted, it only lasts for about as long as it takes to swallow it, but we're going to look at that every time. We're going to go for that over and over again, especially when we're not feeling good at certain times of month. But cortisol, why do you think cortisol is important? Kind of. So cortisol, there's a bit of a misperception around it. Cortisol is actually not a stress hormone per se. What it does is it comes in and it combats our adrenaline. So our adrenaline is really, really high because of our stress, especially if it's chronic stress. And the cortisol is supposed to come in and just kind of calm everything down. The problem with cortisol is, well, backing up. Adrenaline, on a fundamental level, is to help us get away from danger, okay? But we're not outrunning tigers anymore. We're outrunning deadlines and carpools and in-laws, So we don't have the same physical stressors that we used to. So when we were having to outrun our lions, the adrenaline would come in and flood our system with sugar to give us enough energy to get away. We're not utilizing that sugar like we did back then. So cortisol, it actually impedes our ability to break down sugar, and it keeps more in our bloodstream. So we've seen those infomercials about reducing your belly fat. Cortisol creates all the belly fat. You can reduce your belly fat with pills. No, you can't. But you can by reducing your stress. Because if you don't have that increased stress response, you don't have the cortisol coming in to kind of mitigate that. So what happens is it increases our fat storage. So if we're not utilizing that energy that's being thrust into our system, we have all of these extra all this extra glucose, and then we're not breaking it down. We're not utilizing our fat storage, so it just kind of sits there. Ghrelin. Does anyone know what ghrelin is? Hunger hormone, very good. It stimulates your appetite. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And then leptin. Does anyone know what leptin is? So it's our satiety hormone. It tells us that we're satisfied. It tells us that we've had enough. And it also utilizes our fat storage. Okay, sleep and stress. Go through this really quickly. How much sleep do we need tonight?
8 to 10 hours.
Okay. So everyone's different. I'm hearing different numbers in here. What's the general guideline?
6 to 8.
Yeah. So about 6 to 8, 7 to 8. Again, everyone's different. But why do they give us that guideline? It is when we're the most functional. So what they have noticed is that if we are chronically not getting enough sleep, it puts us at higher risk for heart disease, stroke, and actually diabetes. Does that surprise anybody? Do you know why it puts us at risk for diabetes? In part. So she's saying that we get rid of glucose while we're sleeping. In general, all of our hormones are calibrating themselves while we're sleeping. So yes, in part that could be true because it increases our insulin resistance. So part of what happens is our insulin isn't able to function at optimal levels if we're not getting enough sleep. The other interesting thing about sleep, how many of you have noticed that after a night of 4 or 5 hours of sleep, we're ravenous the next day? Do you know why that is? Yeah, part of it is trying to stay awake because if we're not getting our energy through food, or through sleep, we need it to get from somewhere, so we'll get it. Anyone else know why that might be the case? Yes, it does. So ghrelin increases with lack of sleep. So not only does the ghrelin increase, leptin decreases, because what they have found is that we actually produce leptin during REM sleep. So if we're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep per night, we're not getting enough cycles of REM. So it's interesting how it all plays out. So we talked about calibrating our hormones, ghrelin and leptin, insulin resistance. And then did you know that lack of sleep and increased stress can actually damage your serotonin receptor sites? So it creates this cycle where, we talked about serotonin, and we don't have enough serotonin. We have insomnia and irritability, and so that can increase our stress, and so we increase our stress, and then we have less serotonin available to us. You see how this is all kind of playing together? And then we can also experience, through chronic stress, adrenal fatigue. Does anyone know what adrenal fatigue is? So yeah, adrenaline. So the adrenal glands are what produce our adrenaline, and eventually we can just destroy that ability to where it just knocks us out, because our body can only pump so much adrenaline into our system before we can't do it anymore. Okay, mindless eating. This cartoon is from a book called Mindless Eating by Brian Lansing. Another really fascinating book, if you've never read it. He does a lot of experiments around the psychology of eating, and the one that I think is really noteworthy is popcorn experiment. And if you can't see this, it says his stomach says, how much are we going to eat, and his eyes say, we'll let you know. Sound familiar? So what he did is he went to a movie theater, he took popcorn, put it in biohazard bags for 5 days, let it get really gross and stale, and then he put it in medium and large tubs and handed it out for free at a movie. Sounds delicious, right? What do you think happened? Yeah, people ate it. So what do you think was different between the sizes? If you had more, you ate more. Yes. So if you had the large container, you ate more than if you had the medium-sized container. And it's interesting too because they observed people and they would watch people pick it up, and it's almost like they realize it doesn't taste good. They put it back down only to pick it back up again. And it's so fascinating how we are so automatic about it. Someone was telling me the other day that they were watching their mother at the computer eating something out of a bag, and they actually moved the bag. She didn't even notice. They moved the bag, and for like 30 seconds, she was still trying to reach for it because we're on autopilot at that point. Okay, so behavioral contributors. We have several things. We've talked about the physiology behind all of this, but we have several things that we do ourselves that kind of muck up this whole emotional eating thing. One is a feast or famine cycle. This often happens with deprivation diets. So what happens is, as soon as we've decided to go on this diet and we cut out everything, we go all or nothing, what do we want? All the food you cut out, right? So we call it the red truck mentality. If I say, don't think about a red truck, what just popped into your head, right? So really kind of thinking about the psychology around that connection to food and that deprivation. So making sure that if you are making changes in your diet to include things that still provide, some of that, feel good. So, a lot of what I've heard too with the surgery is how good food tastes. Once you're getting rid of some of those other things, but not, depriving you with that. Oh, you haven't got there yet. You'll get there. And so, that's probably one of the things you're thinking about a lot as you haven't gotten there is when you get there. Skipping meals. So this is a big one, and I think that having surgery, this is something that's kind of beaten into your heads with good reason. Why do you think that it was really important to eat regularly?
Because you're too ravenous and you eat everything.
you can't think straight.
Yeah, so what she's saying is you're too ravenous if you wait too long, you can't even think straight. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Your glucose levels drop. Yeah. So your glucose levels drop and you can get really shaky. What happens to your metabolism? And then what happens the next time you eat?
Eat more.
Yes. Yeah, so what happens is our body stops trusting us. We really need to fuel our bodies throughout the day. So even if we're not looking at weight loss, we're not looking at metabolism, we really need to fuel our bodies pretty consistently throughout the day so that our body trusts that it's going to get its next meal or snack. Okay? And when it doesn't trust us anymore, especially if we're in this chronic state of waiting too long between meals, I'll pick on nurses for a second because I know that this happens to them a lot. But you have nurses that are like, especially in a hospital setting, and they're going from one crisis to another, to another, to another. They might go 12 hours and not have a chance to eat. And so what happens is as soon as they're able to eat, the body is just saying, hey, move over, sister, because I don't trust that you're going to give me enough, so I'm going to get as much in as quickly as possible. Reward and punishment. Why would that be a problem? When I'm good and I exercise, I get dessert, right? That's not a problem, right? You guys are smiling. So why would the reward and punishment be an issue?
It's psychological, so it's harder to overcome.
It's harder to overcome.
Right, because it's psychological. You're telling yourself you're going to get rewarded, and if you don't get it, then you're punishing yourself to go back. That's like rewarding.
Right, it becomes a vicious cycle.
Kind of down this side of this area.
Well, like what?
Just kind of stay over here, so I can see
sorry,
you.
am I-
Yeah.
I'll let you run along. Sorry about that.
Okay,
At least
sorry.
I don't know who's on third. So, yeah, so it becomes this vicious cycle, especially when we're in these newly in these behaviors, because it's like, well, I can eat dinner if I exercise, and if I don't exercise, I'm bad and I don't deserve dinner. Wow, think about the psychology around that. Especially when we set ourselves up with those words of good and bad based on our behavior, that can be pretty shameful, and that can throw us again back into that cycle. We'll talk about it in a second. Shoulds. Should is my least favorite word. That would call people out on it. Why do you think should would be an issue? I call you out on it.
Guilt. It's guilt.
Guilt?
Should have, could have, almost, but didn't.
Right. Should have, could have, almost but didn't. Guilt, right? And shame. I should have gone to the gym and I didn't. Now I'm a bad person. So where does that lead us? Yes? Lead us into depression. What else? It really can. So it leads us into eating to feel better. Because a lot of what happens, and we'll talk about this in just a second, is, well, I've already blown it, so I might as well keep digging, right? So then we have the cycle of self-sabotage. I think, yeah. So what happens is we have a trigger. So I'm going to say, we'll talk about kind of pre-surgery cycle. Let's say you go on a diet, okay? So it's Monday morning, everything's going really great. 8 a.m., been up for an hour, it's going fantastic. I get to work and there's a box of donuts. And then I think, well, I shouldn't have that. I do. So I eat it, it looks delicious. And I think, well, I'm a failure, I'm a loser. Knew I couldn't do this. Any other thoughts that came up for you guys with regard to fast food and dieting? Shout them out.
Because I just won't eat lunch.
Okay. So I'll have to punish myself by not eating lunch. What else? What are some of the other thoughts?
I exercised really well yesterday, so I'm good for this.
So you're justify it? Okay.
I already messed it up. I might as well go for broke.
Might as well keep going because I'm already a failure, right? Yeah. So then got some emotions around that. So if I've called myself a loser and a failure, what do you think I'm going to feel? Yeah, sad and angry.
And I can eat some more bad stuff because
Yeah. So I might
I'm already a bad person, so what's the matter?
What does it matter? I might as well go back and eat 3 more. Right? So then, what are the consequences?
Guilt. Shame.
More guilt, more shame. You might feel physically sick. No.
You can just take 3 donuts, you're off sugar.
Yeah. In about 30 minutes, you're really going to feel it, right? So then you probably feel more irritable, any confidence or self-esteem that you had probably dwindling. So then that heads right back in and becomes a new trigger. So we spiral around in that. Seem familiar to anybody? And then talking about, post-diets or post-surgery stuff, I hear all the time people are like, I cheated, beat myself up, so they're right in the middle of this spiral. Instead of just kind of saying, okay, I made a decision, I don't think it was best for my long-term goals, but here's how I can get back on track. They're like, I'm just going to keep digging myself in because there's so much shame attached to it. Okay, so what do we do? What do we do about all of this? Have we lost But as you guys have all realized, that doesn't change your relationship with food, does it? No, it just makes the consequences greater when you eat it. Which, in some ways is nice because it gives you a little bit of a better stopgap, but it doesn't make the cravings go away.
You have to face your emotions.
Yeah.
And you can find a way to do it.
Right. And I think that part of this is just even starting to identify your emotions. It's funny when I start working with someone who struggles with emotional eating, I'll ask them, what emotions they feel, and they start telling me thoughts. They're so out of touch with their emotions that they don't even know emotion words. How many of you guys can relate to that? That, you've numbed yourself for so long that you don't even recognize what you're feeling any given time. And what's so scary about emotions anyway? Why do people think that?
Painful.
Okay.
Makes you vulnerable.
Makes you vulnerable. Okay. The interesting thing about emotions is when they looked at the chemical reaction that takes place in the brain when we feel an emotion, it actually only lasts a short period of time. How long do you think it lasts?
Seconds? 30 seconds? 10 seconds?
Close, 90 seconds. 90. That's how long the actual chemical reaction takes. But it's so much of the meaning that we associate with it. All of the thoughts and all of the history and all of the beliefs that we can't feel the emotions that really takes off that. And just by allowing yourself to feel it, if you just sat with it for a little bit, you would notice that the intensity starts to decrease. How many of you have ever been smokers? Okay, so a couple of you, a few of you. What happened when you were trying to quit smoking? What happened if you just delayed a cigarette by eating a couple of minutes? It worked. Yeah, the intensity decreases pretty significantly. It might still be there, but at least it seems a little bit more manageable. And a lot of that would happen with the emotions too, if you just allowed yourself to sit with them and feel them, recognize where they're coming from, validate that it's okay to feel a certain way. I think a lot of what happens with this is that we shame ourselves when we feel emotions. We think, I shouldn't feel that way, as it should. That's a key that maybe there's something else going on there. Or I just need to pick myself up by my bootstraps. I need to be stronger. I need to, get over it. It's been 20 years. Why am I not over it? Instead of beating yourself up, just say, wow, that was a really cool thing. I remember it. It felt bad. Just allowing yourself to feel that way, acknowledging it and validating it, goes a long way with being able to deal with it. Keeping everything in balance. So we talk about spheres. I talk about spheres in life. Our physical needs. Making sure that we're taking care of all of our physical needs. That means getting adequate nutrition, eating multiple meals throughout the day. That means drinking enough water, taking our medications, our vitamins, getting enough sleep. Okay? Our emotional needs, making sure that we keep our stress in check and that we have people to talk to. This is where counseling becomes a really powerful piece of the puzzle too, because if if we have that history, that painful past stuff, by resolving it, we feel so much better in the present. Mental, so keeping our minds mentally stimulated. When we do the same thing day in and day out, which by the way, I think is one of the reasons why food is so powerful too. We tend to do the same thing day in and day out, and really the only thing that changes are the clothes that we wear and the food we eat. So it becomes a way of creating variety. So creating that mental stimulation in other ways is really powerful. Our recreational needs, making sure that we're engaged in hobbies, playing like we did when we were kids, making sure that we're doing fun things, because I think once we hit adulthood, a lot of the time, we just work, and we work until we die, and that's no fun. Why would anyone want to do that? Social needs, making sure that we have friends and social outlets, people that we can talk to, people that we can go do those fun things with, and then spiritual needs. And that doesn't mean religion, that just means a connection to something bigger than us, or just a connection in general. The last thing we're going to talk about is the hunger fullness scale. You guys are pretty familiar with this? Yeah? Everyone's seen this before? I'm not seeing very many hands. Okay, hunger and fullness scale. So if you can't see this in the back, we have one is, I am so hungry, I am cranky. I call it hangry myself. My husband has really encouraged me to keep snacks in my purse because when I get hangry, I'm like a 3-year-old who needs a nap, and I'm not that pleasant to be around. A 10 is I'm so full that I'm really getting sick and nauseous. A 5 is about how we feel maybe an hour after eating. We're not hungry, we're not full, we're not really even thinking about food. And what we want to do is we want to try and stay in the middle. We want to eat as soon as we start to feel hungry and stop as soon as we're not hungry anymore. Notice how I didn't say stop as soon as you're full. Stop as soon as you're not hungry anymore. Why do you think they tell you to really eat slowly and take 20 minutes to eat? Right. It takes that long for your brain to register. So we have to put our fork down. We have to allow it time to settle. Because if we wait to stop eating until we're full, what happens? You eat too much and you've suddenly gone from a 5 to a 10. Okay, so using this, I want to talk about the 5 Ds. We determine, am I physically or emotionally hungry? If you're not feeling those physical symptoms of 4 through 1, you are not physically hungry. If you are not hungry enough to eat an apple, you are not hungry enough to eat. If you're only hungry enough to eat cheeseburger or chocolate cake, you're probably not hungry. So we want to determine, using that scale, am I experiencing those physical sensations? And this is really kind of difficult for a lot of people initially, because especially if we have eaten really consistently throughout the day and we never allow ourselves to get hungry, that is a really new experience. Okay? So just allowing yourself to sit with that feeling and recognize what it starts to feel like. And everybody's different in what that looks like. So if you find that you are a 5 or higher on the scale, so you're not hungry, delay for 10 minutes. Only 10 minutes. We're kind of using that cigarette trick, right? So if you wait 10 minutes, distract yourself with something else. So get your mind off of it, doing something else. Distance yourself from the food. So get out of the kitchen or away from wherever the food is. If you're at a party, go and sit talking to other people somewhere away from the food for 10 minutes. And then if after that 10 minutes you truly still feel like you need to eat, decide. Make a very conscious decision. And what that will look like, and hopefully all of your meals look like this at this point, but sitting at a table, never eating out of a package, putting it in a bowl or on a plate, really taking the time to experience the food, and also deciding how much you need so that you're not feeling deprived, you're not feeling guilty. Which, by the way, I mean, guilt's a whole other topic. I think feeling guilty about eating food is like feeling guilty about breathing oxygen. We need it for survival, but we've assigned so much emotion to it. Questions? I just don't know why. No? I have satisfied all of your needs?
I have one, so you may not know, but I have heard and experienced, as far as like the hormonal level after surgery, that there is a huge increase in, for me at least, like wanting to punch someone. And and the more women I talk to, I hear that that's pretty much the case, like PMS itself after surgery. So I'm just wondering if, like, I'm kind of seeing serotonin and stuff like that, but did you know, can you speak more to that?
I can.
Okay.
Okay, so what happens, actually, and this is really interesting with menopause, we actually create estrogen through fat cells. So as we're losing fat, we're also decreasing our estrogen, which then decreases our serotonin, ability. That makes sense.
Interesting. I am so excited. I'm like, biological!
Tell my mom I want to punch you in the face. That doesn't mean that it's not a good idea to engage in stress management techniques around that.
Okay.
But yeah, that is a huge part of it.
How do you really get out of the cycle of eating and all this? It's a cycle thing. So how do you start to get out of the cycle and not jump back into that cycle?
Okay, so the question is, how do you get out of the cycle? And that is a really great question. Honestly, cognitive therapy is an amazing tool for that. Cognitive therapy actually shows changes in the brain. They have done studies through UCLA. They mostly did the studies through looking at OCD. But by using cognitive therapy, you can rewire some of those neural pathways and create new ones so that you don't have that conditioned response anymore. It's just like, how many of you guys drive to work the same way every day? Okay, so you've got that wired neural pathway, but as soon as you really start to mindfully, if you take another job somewhere else, as soon as you start to mindfully go somewhere else, eventually that becomes a new habit too. And so by, rewiring some of the thinking, by being able to target some of those thoughts in the cycle of self-sabotage, really amazing. And honestly, a big part of that is if there's any trauma associated with your eating, resolving the trauma, huge.
That's really counseling. Is that what
Counseling is really great, and just behavior change in general, because the more you engage in those new behaviors, the less strong the previous behaviors.
Trying to write down your behaviors associated with eating, and then just always constantly trying to think before you eat. So basically,
That's definitely part of it. Yeah, making it a mindful process instead of a mindless process. Well, thank you all so much for your time. It's been really fun working today. And I'll be doing the group tonight too, so if any of you are around for that. We will start that in about 30 minutes.